we're on live?
About 5 more seconds and you will be.
Okay.
Do we need to mute ourselves?
Okay, it is good to go now.
Okay. So we'll call the July meeting of the Art Commission of Pittsburgh to order. Roll call.
Indivina,
Here.
Glatia,
Here.
Luckett,
Here.
Aramoto Mercer,
Here.
Moss,
Here.
Parsakian,
Here.
Gable, Lucas, Dash, Minert,
Here.
and Cavallini is here. And Lucas just arrived.
So review and approval of meeting minutes.
I don't have any comments. I'd make a motion for approval.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor? We have to do a roll call for this.
Indivina,
Yay.
Luckett,
Yay.
Aramoto Mercer,
Yay.
Parsakian.
Yes.
Okay. Regular correspondence. Is there any correspondence?
There's a series of emails that were forwarded to me earlier today that were received through yesterday afternoon.
Are those the ones regarding the Columbus statue, or there are other ones?
Yes, just those ones. Those are the only ones we have.
Okay, I think we'll take those up in staff reports. Okay, so we can get to the items for review. The first item is the small cell aesthetic standards Crown Castle.
I'm going to make the presenter for this a panelist, and then he will be able to give his presentation. So Tom, it looks like you are able to now unmute and begin.
Good afternoon, commissioners. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for your time today. Crown Castle, I'm Tom Musgrove. I'm Government Affairs Manager for Crown Castle. We were in front of the commission back in late February for conceptual approval of an amendment to the city's small cell design aesthetic standards. Specifically, what we were looking to do was amend the standards to provide a replacement for the ornamental light posts there and make them fully integrated smart poles where they're antenna slash light posts. The direction, we did receive conceptual approval at that hearing, and with the direction that we come back and actually supply the city and the commissioners with the actual language for the aesthetic standards. So we worked closely with DOMI. We submitted standards over to them shortly thereafter the last meeting, and for their feedback, input, and approval, and that's what we're presenting here before you today. So do I have control of the deck, or
You can just tell me when you want to advance, please.
Okay, thanks, Tony. If you want to go to this couple slides, we can just walk through it. This is kind of what the poll looks like. This is what we presented for conceptual approval last time. Next slide. And different colors. We were trying to show different angles of how we would orient them. We talked about, do we want the luminaires going parallel to the street edge, or do we want them to turn sideways? And then next slide, Tony. And that's just the gray colors and the green colors. These are obviously markups. But when we get to the actual the design standard. That's kind of what I wanted to present to you guys today. So go ahead, Tony, next 2 slides. Okay, so we separated this into 2 separate sections, the pole and the actual antenna or the equipment on the pole. So for the pole itself, when what we presented to you, it's pretty standard language. The diameter of the pole was 13 inches, and that's consistent with those specific light posts that you guys have in the city. Other standard language in here is that they must be made of aluminum or steel. The luminaire arms must match the adjacent lighting, so we can't have them higher or lower. And they must contain an LED fixture. And then we pretty much copied the standards that the city currently has for paint and color. And then the last part here is just the height of it cannot exceed 20 feet. So that's the description of the pole. Probably what's more important to you folks is the next slide. And it's the equipment. So we talked about the antennas last time and putting them above and below. So you guys said that you would like them below. So we wrote the first bullet here, a single antenna may be mounted on top of the pole. So that's just the original antenna. But when we talked about co-locating antennas on the pole, the commissioners requested that they be put below the luminaire. So we added the language here that co-location of multiple carriers or additional antenna is encouraged, and any additional antenna should be mounted below the lights. And then the one caveat we put in here is if placing the antenna below the luminaires is not technically feasible, which means you put an antenna under the luminaires and it doesn't work, or it does not meet FCC standards, then the antenna would be allowed to go up above the highest antenna. And then there's just some additional language in here about the size of the top mounted antenna, and then the city, we put a little bit of additional language in there because we know that the city does not desire to have a bunch of these poles pretty much on every corner. So we added language to make sure that they were co-locatable and they were taking that into consideration in their review. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys happen to have today and take any comments that you may happen to have.
Just to clarify, these standards apply to Crown Castle, or they apply across the board?
They would apply across the board. It would be for any, wireless facility.
You didn't speak specifically to the requirements for the base of the pole. Is that stipulated somewhere?
It is not, but it would be the same standard base that the city currently has. So it would be attached with the bracket on the bottom and bolted into the ground. And that's just a standard detail that the city already has.
Should this reference that then? Should it reference this? I just want to be careful that we don't have somebody install a pole with an enormous.
No, it's an excellent comment, and it can absolutely be added to this.
And you were talking about 2 orientations with respect to the lights and the way they are like either parallel to the street or vertical. Like, so what's the orientation you're going with?
It would be running parallel because we felt that running perpendicular was a safety issue. A truck could come by and clip it.
Perfect. Thanks.
This is Commissioner Arimoto Mercer. Since we've standardized things through DOMI, what is DOMI's opinion on these alterations?
So we're supportive of the, kind of updating the guidelines so that they are applicable to everybody, as opposed to approving specific, this one pole model number of color of this company is now allowed. So I believe that these are ones that we are comfortable with because they are general modifications that would be applicable and company agnostic.
So is there a letter of support? I'm sorry, I don't have everything in front of me.
That's okay. There were 2 letters of support submitted with our application. One was from the Pittsburgh Technical Council and the other one was from the Pittsburgh Downtown Development Corporation.
I'm sorry, what I meant was, has DOMI written a letter of support?
Domi was initially considered, I think, a co-applicant on this.
Okay.
I'm not quite understanding the co-location of multiple carriers, and you, in your description, you said that those additional devices are supposed to be mounted below the luminaires, the light fixtures. How would that be done?
It would just be a simple bracket mount. There would be a port in the side of the antenna. There'd be a port in the side of the pole below the luminaire, and then they would just attach a bracket and connect to the cabling, the electric, and the fiber optic cable through that port below the luminaire.
So this additional device would be mounted on the outside of the pole.
Yeah, but you can also see where it says it needs to be shrouded if it is mounted outside the pole. So
And that shroud could also be the same size as you state below, 14.5 inches in diameter by 24 inches tall.
It would depend on the type of antenna. And that's why we kind of added the bullet point in there. The city shall consider reasonable exceptions to antenna size for technically feasible reasons to promote co-location.
Have you shown us an example that might have, and how many additional devices could be mounted to a single pole? Could we have a pole with 6 additional devices mounted all over it?
I don't know that, if you go back up to I guess it would be slide 2. So if this one shows it above, so what you can see is that one on the top is that it would be shrouded. That'd be an additional carrier on top. The first carrier is at that 19-foot level.
Okay.
So the second carrier is at that 22.6 level, and that the drawing, in all honesty, probably should have shown it with the shroud, but then it would just look like a black box. So that's how we were trying to show the second carrier on it.
Correct.
So that would be shrouded and be mounted there. If it was below, it would be below the luminaire. That antenna would stick out and would have maybe a larger shroud on it. Realistically, the top mount is probably going to be a cleaner look for these poles than the lower mount.
Right. That's where that's kind of the point of my question. I'm concerned about us either recommending or allowing for these additional devices to be mounted on the outside or on the side of the pole down at a lower level. It seems like it would be much better to keep it up on top.
Or we were just taking in consideration feedback that we received from the commissioners from the last meeting.
Right, I understand.
But it's not a problem. It's not a challenge at all for us to take that and modify it and just strike out the below the luminaires, and that would be a way to fix that.
I think it might be helpful to see an example of what it might look like if it were mounted on the side of the pole below the lamps. If we want to consider that as a recommendation or a requirement, as opposed to putting them on the top.
Would that be a larger barrel, or would that be like a box mounted on the side, or just what would that look like?
It would look like a larger barrel.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's my concern, I think. And again, you didn't answer whether there could be multiple of those barrels on a single pole, but I'd be concerned about what that would start to look like if we have these poles and have one or more additional shrouds mounted to the side of it.
Understood. And there's 2 ways you can look at it. Is one, you want to be able to co-locate additional carriers on single pieces of infrastructure. That way you're not putting new pieces of infrastructure into the city and disrupting the sidewalks and the streets all the time. So, we firmly believe in co-locatable infrastructure. It's just the ways and means that we go about it. And obviously with the Arts Commission, we kind of fall back on whatever is technically feasible, right? So if you put the antenna below the luminaire and it still works, it may have that larger barrel shroud on it, but it also works, and it probably actually works better if you put it on top and keep a shroud around it. So, you know, realistically, the top option would be a better option all around based off of what I'm hearing from the commissioners.
That would be my preference.
That would be my preference as well.
Yeah, mine too. This is Commissioner Luckett. How many carriers potentially could fit on one pole?
We typically design all structures for 2 to 3.
So then what might be the maximum height that we would, if we had 3 carriers, what would that maximum height be?
About 24 feet, 24 to 25 feet.
Okay.
My preference is also on top. Now, can you like keep like the way you've shown, like the first carrier will be at 190 inches and then the second one will go over it. Like, so would like the height keep increasing, or can the pole height sort of remain the same and consistent all over the city, and the mounts be done lower so that the height, like, so if I have 3 carriers on one pole and 2 on one and only 1 on one, like it doesn't look like the height is varying for each of the poles, because that would look kind of weird on the same street if we have like these height variations.
Yeah, you know, and that's ultimately a decision for the city to decide, you know, whether they want to encourage co-location, and it may vary the height of the pole by, you know, a foot and a half. And, you know, realistically speaking, whenever, maybe I'll just speak for myself and I wouldn't want to speak for anybody else here on this call, but, you know, people are tend to be looking down and not necessarily looking, you know, up at these things. I don't know how noticeable a foot and a half difference between one pole to the next would look, you know, when you're kind of running up and down the street. Now, you know, it could be modified by lowering the luminaire, but that would actually look worse if you had one luminaire lower than the rest that were in an array.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think the height would not be perceptible, and that would be, again, much preferable to having a big barrel below the luminaire. Actually, much more obtrusive, I think.
I hear you. Agree.
This is Commissioner Parsakian. So when you get the information of how many carriers that will actually be needed, so will those all be uniform? So if you have 3 carriers, so all the poles would be uniform in that way?
They would be. Now, typically, you know, the carriers don't all band together and say, we're all going to build this one at the same time. Crown Castle will build one of these for one prospective carrier. And then, you know, the intent is that we make it multiple carrier ready. So when carrier 2 comes along, we would add them on top, and hopefully carrier 3 would come along too. And we'd have, you know, there's 3 major carriers today. So we would hope that we would design this for 3 major carriers. And, you know, it would just be over time as a carrier's network need for either coverage or capacity changes, whether they would, you know, need to use this piece of infrastructure.
Would it be best to design it for the 3 carriers so it's uniform and we don't have to keep changing the design?
It will be uniform. It's just the only difference will be is as another carrier comes on and adds their equipment, it would just go up and it would be shrouded around the top. You know, you can't really design it because for 3 carriers today, because the carriers use 3 different types of antenna that vary in size, and it couldn't be uniform for each of them.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other comments from the commissioner?
Well, I just wondered, do the standards need to stipulate a maximum number? I mean, you've been saying you wouldn't have more than 3, but should the standards be very specific to that and state that a single pole shall not have more than 3 carriers? And should the standards then stipulate a top height that the pole, including the shrouds, may not exceed?
I would defer to the commissioners here. And I just one note real quick. I noticed that in the design that we submitted, and that it's on this PowerPoint or on this page, there does show the foundation design right there in that bottom right-hand corner. You can see how it's mounted to the base.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it would be reasonable to stipulate that the maximum of 3 at this point, and if it got beyond that, then it would be something for the commission to consider further. But it seems like in the foreseeable future that there would be 3 as a maximum.
So a maximum of 3 carriers per pole and a maximum height, including the shrouds at 24 feet. So in that case, no pole, including shrouds, should exceed 24 feet. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yep, I would agree.
I
I
agree.
agree.
I agree as well.
I agree also.
Okay. Again, any other further comments from the commission? Is there anybody registered to make comments from the public?
We don't have anyone registered, and at this point, there is no one with a hand raised either.
Okay. So they are here for the final review of these standards. Is there a motion to that effect?
Sure, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed design standards for the poles, with the addition and clarification that no pole shall have more than 3 carriers and a maximum height of 24 feet, including pole and shroud.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in
And just-
favor? Roll call?
Indovina,
Yes.
Glatya,
Yes.
Luckett,
Yay.
Parsakian.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the next item is the Swift Mile charging stations, and this is here for conceptual review.
The 3 presenters for that one should be in as panelists now and able to unmute themselves. Are Ted, Lolly, and Tosh all in now?
This is Ted Sweeney from Spin.
I'm not sure we can hear the other 2 if you are in as panelists.
Yeah, if you're all there, you can proceed.
Tasha's here.
This is Lolly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. Okay, so we wanted to present this as a conceptual review for the Swift Mile stations that we're hoping to install on our future mobility hubs in different neighborhoods around the city.
Excuse me, mind just saying who you are, your name? 'Cause we can't.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said it earlier. Maybe that was one of
Yeah,
those.
no, 'cause we
Okay.
can't see you. That would be great, please.
Sorry, could you say that one more time?
Could you say who you are, your name? Because we can't see you talking.
Okay. Yes.
You-
My name is Lolly Walsh and I'm with Move 412 and I'm presenting the Swift Mile Arts Commission hearing for the approval of our standard. And we are currently in the process of doing some design work for it. And we have a small amount to present of possible standards that if we start on the next slide, we can see a little bit more, and Ted and Tosh will be able to speak to some of these elements. Ted, would you like to address some of this design right here?
Sure, and so my name's Ted Sweeney, and I'm on the public policy team for SPIN, which is an e-mobility provider who provide electric scooters. We're a subsidiary of Ford Motor Company. And just a small amount of context here for what we're looking at. The DOMI engaged in a selection process for a group of mobility companies to work with DOMI on a pilot for new mobility services that will be integrated into a single app environment and into mobility hubs around the city. And this is intended to operate as a short pilot. We've got a 2-year period to show the value. There's no cost actually to the city for the services that are being offered. And so SPIN acts as a coordinator amongst several private partners. You can actually see their logos on the flag sign there on the station. But the transit app already operates in Pittsburgh as a route planning service. And then Zipcar, Waze Carpool, and then local providers like Port Authority and Healthy Ride are all integrated along with SPIN into the transit app. And that's the goal of the pilot is to give people a variety of non-motorized transportation options in an integrated way that makes it easy, that makes it possible for us to provide equity access to transportation. And designed as a pilot so the city can learn if this type of private investment is useful for addressing the non-motorized transportation goals. So just wanted to provide that bit of context so that we can see what we're looking at here. One element of the system is electric scooters, and charging stations like the one that you're looking at in the rendering support the operation of the electric scooter and compliant parking of the electric scooter. And then there's also a digital information screen here as well. So this is a system that SPIN actually has installed across the country in places from San Francisco to Tampa, Florida. And it's a durable and modular system for parking our electric scooter vehicles. The intention here is for these stations to be a tool for DOMI to use to co-locate with existing Healthy Ride and Port Authority stops, and bringing in things like Zipcar placements and pick up and drop off for Waze Carpools to again bring all these modes together into mobility hubs in specific neighborhood locations that are valuable.
I had a quick question. What neighborhoods are you looking at in specific?
You'll let Tosh take that one.
Sure. Thanks, Ted. Yeah, my name is Tosh Chambers. I'm a policy analyst for DOMI, who's supporting this effort and sponsoring this in particular. A great question. These will show up in, they won't be restricted to any neighborhood. They could potentially be in any of them, though we have been undergoing analysis to kind of find out where the first locations we're looking to install. We are prioritizing areas that not only have like a large density of people in places, but also a lack of shared transportation services or a lack of consistent transit service. So we're identifying those areas right now, but this is we're looking to have this as a standard in hopes that we can continually identify neighborhoods over the term of the pilot.
Sorry to interrupt you again. This is Commissioner Gulatia. I know that the gentleman earlier mentioned that there were some neighborhoods where you were planning to run the pilot. So I just wanted to know what those are for right now. Like, I know you're going to look at expanding it, but currently, which are the areas that you have decided to start the pilot? Sure.
I can share some the kind of first 5 neighborhoods that we're considering, although, there is a certain amount of outreach that we would like to conduct here to just kind of make sure that everyone would like to have these installed there. But we're currently looking at Oakland, so that this can help to extend service into South Oakland, Hazelwood as well, and Garfield, kind of the area bordering Garfield and Bloomfield, are some of the initial locations we're considering. And we also are ensuring that a certain number of these stations, the exact number hasn't been detailed, will be allocated in areas that we are considering kind of high need, which are being identified by the Port Authority's existing equity index that they've used to kind of measure expanding services into areas of high need.
Hi, this is Commissioner Colillo. What are those neighborhoods that are designated high need neighborhoods?
Yeah, sure. There's probably, we're looking at the neighborhoods that are scoring in kind of the upper 20% of the city as having the kind of highest need, based on a lot of demographics, race, income, household situations, and the like. So many of the neighborhoods, they could fall into the Hill District. The several neighborhoods there are all showing up in that area. Belts Hoover and Allentown, some of the hilltops, the Homewood area, Garfield, East Liberty, Larimer, Sheridan. They're kind of all over the city, but we do have those neighborhoods identified.
And then do you have a plan as far as engagement goes?
That's something that we are kind of working on the exact meter and how that those conversations take place. What we're currently considering is because there are kind of a lot of restrictions on how these would be placed. It could be in residential areas, so we're just looking at commercial areas. And there's a matter of the power source that kind of restricts where they would be going. So we kind of identified many neighborhoods, and in each neighborhood kind of a corridor with specific areas. Once we have
Anybody else having a hard time hearing?
Yeah, is this breaking up for everybody?
Yeah, it's breaking up.
Information, we're looking to get to a group of.
We can't hear you, Tosh. You're breaking up. Sorry. I can kind of reiterate. Can you guys hear me a little better than Tosh?
Yes.
Okay. Tosh is on my team at Domi. I can kind of fill in what he was going into. So I don't think he can hear us. Okay, he muted himself. Okay. Tosh was going over a little bit some of our placement criteria. So we do have an expectation for outreach. We will be working with elected representatives, community groups, and adjacent properties for any potentially any location that's being considered. From an environmental perspective, some of the things that these stations would require would be access to electricity. So they would need to be co-located with existing streetlights. We're working with Duquesne Light to be able to power the stations using streetlights. Very similar to Healthy Ride stations, they have a bit of a footprint to them. So we'd likely see them either in the curb lane adjacent to a parking spot, for example. A lot of our sidewalks are very constrained within the city. So I don't think that we would have a lot of locations that are, on sidewalks, especially given right now how we've been repurposing a lot of sidewalk and roadway space for COVID Street's commercial operations. And they, some of the other data that went into the tentative placement for them is looking at, as Tosh was saying, transportation demand. Where are there communities that have a high need for public transportation, but maybe don't have the highest of connectivity to high frequency bus lines? And these would be implemented to help kind of fill some of that transportation mobility gap.
This is Commissioner Parsakian. What is the footprint of this unit? It looks like a 6-scooter unit. Would that be the standard?
Ted, do you want to talk to that?
Yeah, so in 6 and 12 would be the standards that space allowing that we would be most expecting to install in these in the types of locations that Tosh and Ken spoke to. And so the unit that you're looking at there, that is a 10-foot unit.
10 feet by what's the other dimension?
The depth with the scooter is 4 feet.
That's a pretty big footprint.
For a point of reference, standard car parking spaces are usually about 18 to 22 feet long and 8 feet wide. So this, as proposed, would fit within one standard car parking space.
And this would be similar to the bike share footprint.
Much smaller. Well, actually, you guys have pretty small, Healthy Ride is pretty small stations, but yeah, very similar and similar purpose too. So similar placement criteria for accessibility purposes.
So my other question would be marginalized communities that do need extra transportation. I mean, if we're talking like Oakland and Bloomfield, I know there's a big demand, but also when we're talking about filling in the gap of a community that can use extra transportation, that would be important to identify.
Definitely. It looks like Tosh might be back with us. Tosh, do you want to go a little bit more deeply into some of the community identification criteria that you used, and also a little bit about the phasing of the program and how certain communities might be implemented in what order?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a great question. Yeah, we've kind of undergone a process, like I said, to understand the layout of each neighborhood, not only the demographics, but also the existing transportation layout. What some of the analysis that we're doing to find some of the first locations are the areas that have, probably the largest density of people and places, but also some of the worst connection, worst kind of transit scores or other shared transportation. So what we've done are just kind of isolate these neighborhoods that there's really just a large population of people that could benefit from having better connections to transit, recognizing that scooters in many cases can be a tool to connect to or from transit in that first and last mile. I will say, like, that highlights communities on a census block group level, which is smaller than a neighborhood kind of area that we're identifying. And those areas may not have any transit existing, so we'll be looking to allocate these hubs in a way that serves those neighborhoods, but may not exactly be located directly in them. And that's just because, if we want to have these as a tool connecting to transit, we want them, we're looking into places that have already the existing high transit ridership or service numbers, but recognizing that people from the outside communities can use these stations as a part of that first and last mile trip. Also recognizing that these scooters are not just relegated to these docks; they will be kind of free range, and we'll be utilized in these communities, and we have kind of another set of criteria to ensure that communities of need will be experiencing levels of these scooters. So that's why we have kind of looked at just the demand and density of people in an area to know where to allocate these things, because we're wanting these to serve as a purpose of organizing scooter fleets where we're just expecting there to be a large amount of them due to just a large number of people and places. So through that analysis of identifying where the density of people is and comparing that to low transit service, we've identified 5 neighborhoods and an additional 5 beyond that after the first kind of go at installing these. But the exact number, I think, of stations that we're looking to install is may still be up for the jury may still be out, but I think it's around 2025. But through that process and understanding the density as well as need, and then also equity, there's a number of components at play. But we'll be kind of installing these in areas that kind of meet all of those different use cases throughout the first year or so of the program.
I have another question. Are these electric or are they just by a foot powered?
Right, they are electric powered scooters and charging stations.
And because we have the challenge of hills, how do they operate up and down hills in Pittsburgh? Or would they?
Great question, and maybe Ted can speak to this.
Yeah, again, happy to talk as much as we need about the mobility technology. I know we're constrained on time and hoping to get aesthetic feedback on the station infrastructure itself. But the e-scooters are able to handle about a 10% grade, so that doesn't cover every hill in Pittsburgh. Deployments will relate to the topography of the area. So the hilliest areas may not see the same level of deployment.
Commissioner Gulatia, I was wondering if you had, because I know you said it needs to be near a charging station near Duquesne Light and you're in conversation with them. Have you thought of also doing like a solar powered sort of setup so that we kind of are a little bit conscious of climate and how we need to respond to everything that's going on right now?
So solar power for these stations is definitely in the future of design. Again, this is a short 2-year pilot, and so we're a bit constrained to the technology that's ready to deploy, this year and next year in terms of what can go in. As far as powering the public information kiosk screen, the solar, it would be fairly large. And would potentially add additional aesthetic challenges. But certainly in the future, that is the intention as this technology continues to refine.
The bike share units do have solar power, and it is a small unit if you have seen any of these.
Yeah, I've been able to use that system, and it's a fantastic system. The difference is that the electric scooters have motor power, and the bicycles in Healthy Ride system are just pedal powered systems. As Healthy Ride transitions to electric bikes themselves, and again, those are going to be integrated into this broader system and this broader app environment. As they're able to do that, they too will have a need to connect to a Duquesne Light power source. Again, certainly the advances in solar technology point to us being able to power electric micromobility vehicles with solar charging stations in the future, but we're just not quite there yet.
Commissioner Arimoto Mercer here. I was wondering about the digital information screen. Does that mimic an app that you may have on your phone? Is it interactive?
That's not going to be an interactive screen in this iteration.
Will you have an app that people can use to find locations and
Yeah, in fact, all of these providers have their own apps, but what's special about this project is that they're all making their technology accessible within a single app called Transit, and that's an app that you can actually download today. It operates in many cities, but this level of integration and the ability to start, for example, an e-scooter trip within that app is something that's new and part of this broader collaboration with Domi.
And is that stated anywhere on the screen or in the signage?
Yeah, so the screen and the sign will both point people to how they can utilize and onboard to the system, as well as pointing them towards the equity program. Spin has equity pricing for folks who need a lower cost transportation and are part of other assistance programs. They can onboard to get a lower fare.
This is
Commissioner Levine. I've got a couple of questions. So this is a kind of a generic version of it. You mentioned various providers. Do they look different than this?
No, sorry, I want to be clear there. The overall collaboration of which these stations are a part involves a number of mobility companies, and that's actually a relatively unique way of offering this. People may be aware that electric scooters have appeared in other cities at sometimes very suddenly. This is quite the opposite approach that Domi has been able to take in Pittsburgh, and on which we've been partnering with them. So the e-scooters from Spin all have a black and orange colorway. We upgrade and replace those e-scooters with new models pretty frequently right now. It's a fast-changing industry, and the technology is improving quickly. So the exact scooter model will improve, but they'll be from Spin, and they'll have that colorway. The station itself is one unit. It does have a few interchangeable pieces. The yellow receptacle pieces that you see and the wheel stop pieces, those are modular pieces that can be installed in any color to match the specific system. In this case, the collaborative has aligned around black and yellow as brand colors for this Pittsburgh specific system. So that's why you see it presented that way in this slide image.
So these are docked for charging, but you mentioned that they would also be free floating, so people could take them and leave them in some location?
Yeah, Tosh, do you want to speak to Kelly's intentions around system operation?
That's right, and you're correct, Commissioner. These can be docked here, but are not required to, and they will be able to be terminated elsewhere in the city. But there will be a number of other regulations on just how they can be parked. For example, they can't be parked on the sidewalk. They are blocking the sidewalk to a certain extent, more than to a path narrower than 4 feet. There's guidance on just where they can be parked in the street too. We'll be, as a part of this, kind of later on looking into installing micro-mobility corrals, which are just kind of painted boxes indicating that scooters should be parked here or there. They wouldn't be able to be, in most cases, depending on the actual property owner, they would not be parked on private property. They would mostly just be relegated to streets and other public areas.
So they have they have some sort of stand, so they would be upright when they're parked?
Sorry, could you say that again?
I said they have some sort of stand, so they would be upright when they're parked.
Right, I believe they have a kickstand. Is that right, Ted?
Yeah, they have a kickstand, and they're self-locking when they're not being ridden.
I know in other cities they have a nuisance factor of people just dropping them wherever. So how would you enforce people just leaving them wherever they care to and not keep them out of the right of way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it does kind of involve a number of components of not only education, but enforcement. There would certainly be many instructions on how to correctly park in the app. And as a part of finishing the trip, there are certain assurances pushed to the user just to make sure that they are
This
correctly
involves
parked.
a lot of, it involves a lot of trust in that way, correct?
Yeah, there's that, but you know, I agree. There's a lot of trust, but there are, you know, education campaigns that I think have had more success in educating users on how to actually park these, and that's something that we're really inviting for DOMI and SPIN and to collaborate on what are the best methods there, and setting up that, you know, trialing new education to users and seeing the effects on that. But you know, that along with, you know, designating actual parking corrals in areas that we're seeing more of these scooters be parked is another component. And yeah, and in general, we can look into other ways of just, you know, reports that are coming in either from 311 or elsewhere, asking, you know, basically saying that these scooters are parked incorrectly. We can vet the certain area and look into what is the solution there. Was it a, you know, a user error, or does this area actually need more corral parking or perhaps a Swift Mile station? So that's something that's data that we can track very efficiently and design the solution on an ad hoc basis.
Also, is there like a GPS on each of the units so you know where to locate them?
Yeah, and so this is a service that we operate in about 70 cities in the U.S. and a few places in Europe as well. So there's quite a bit of structure within how the system operates and the operational model. We have employees that manage the system and are roving throughout the city all day, picking up scooters and returning them to these charging stations or returning them to a central charging facility. It's all on GPS. The users are, you know, if somebody is misparking the scooter, they get consequences that come back to them for that if they're found to be doing that. So there's quite a few things, and really more all the time. I think I want to stress that this is a fairly new service, you know, that sprang up over the last few years, that we are with things like this charging station model. You know, those are some of the ways that we're working to address some of the things that happened early on with misparked scooters. You know, one of the hopes here is that being able to support a network of these charging stations in Pittsburgh that's really more than what any other city has seen, that by incentivizing people to return the scooters to those charging stations with discounts, that we really guide folks to be parking in a much more compliant way without having to rely on the consequences that we have built into the system.
Is there any issue about COVID related problems?
So COVID has been interesting for this industry, and, you know, difficult in many ways, but it's also been difficult for public transit generally. And so one of the things that we've seen in many of these systems is cities asking us to continue to operate or scale up operations or sort of reorient operations along transit lines that may not be operating at the same capacity. I know Port Authority has experienced some of that. So that's one side of it. We have stepped up the daily cleaning and sanitization measures here. But the fact is that being on a e-scooter does provide a naturally socially distanced and outdoor transportation mode. And so it has that mixed quality. Yes, it is a shared device. And so that's why we're doing daily disinfection and have quite a few protocols we could share around that. But also, you know, seeing the relevance of someone being able to have a motorized option that is available and that doesn't have them, you know, getting into an enclosed space with others is valuable in the current context.
And just in terms of design of the what we're showing on this slide, what is the gray box on the right underneath that other sign?
So that is the where all of the power and metering for the station happens. There in some orientations that is a battery box as well. But in this case, we're gonna, for as many of these locations as possible, we're gonna be hooking them up to Duquesne Light Power. So there wouldn't be batteries in that box, but Duquesne may be requiring some metering in order to make that possible, to fit in with their rules. And so that's a location where the metering may be placed as well. It is possible in situations where we are only plugging into the street light that box may not be necessary, but we have to understand what Duquesne Light's metering expectation is going to be before we can commit to eliminating the box, because it's just generally where a lot of power management for the system occurs.
Okay, thank you very much.
This is Commissioner Luckett. I have a couple questions. I've ridden a few of these in different cities, and I just had a couple questions here. Since this is a motorized vehicle, are you putting anything when somebody goes to use it that they have to consent to a motorized vehicle driving it, that they're able to operate it? I mean, I know that there's been, accidents which naturally occur, but sometimes people don't really fully understand operating a motorized vehicle. So that was just one question I had. And then the other question I had was, when you contract with scooter companies, are you contracting with them like for a year or 2 years? Because sometimes some of them have kind of left and then just left these abandoned scooters for the city to have to address.
Those are great questions, Commissioner, and I'll start with it.
Here's by the way,
Oh, go ahead.
I was one in LA and New York and San Francisco. Yeah.
So to the first question of what people do when they sign up, folks are presented with a set of comprehensive safety information and local compliance guidelines that they have to view and affirm within the app environment. So that's one thing. There are agreements that they're assenting to as well. That the general model that I would encourage folks to think about is the model of folks using the Healthy Ride bikes. So there's educational information, there's expectations of the user. There's an age limitation that will impose, but it doesn't actually require a driver's license to utilize the vehicle. And with accessibility as the goal, that's actually an important piece of the program. So certainly the educational information. To the point about scooter companies being in flux and rising and falling, absolutely, that's been very dynamic as the popularity of this technology has taken off. Spin was selected as the city's partner for the first 2-year pilot, so you've got that time boundary there with the 2 years. But yeah, Spin is a subsidiary of Ford Motor Company, and so we have some hopes about being around for a while. And we're operating in many other cities as well. So certainly have the experience and a good argument to make about our staying power that we were able to make to Domi in terms of being selected in that process.
I also have a comment. I believe your application stated that this was a 2-year project, which we have determined a temporary project is of 1-year duration. So I'm not quite sure how that should be changed on the application. Maybe Sarah can help us, or Tony.
Sorry, Commissioner, what's your concern? This would not fall into the temporary aspect of what the commission would not be asked to look at. I realize I said several negatives there, but help me understand what your question is.
I believe that they in their application stated that it was a temporary project. Is that not correct?
Well, sure. So per the Art Commission's purview, temporary is defined as 12 months or less. But I think for purposes of this, it would be treated per Art Commission definition as longer term.
Are there other questions or comments? No? Is there anybody who's signed up to make a comment from the public?
There is not, no.
Okay. So they are here for conceptual review. So is there a motion regarding the disposition? Anybody?
I would be happy to make a motion. I would make a motion for conceptual design approval of the, I'm not sure what we're calling this, the scooter ride share, or not ride share, but scooter.
Swift Mile Charging Station.
With mile charging stations. Thank you.
I second.
Roll call?
Indovina,
Yes.
Luckett,
Yay.
Aramoto Mercer, you're on mute, Carrie.
Sorry. Yay.
Okay. And Parsakian.
Yes.
Motion is carried. Conceptual review is granted. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on our agenda, director and staff reports.
I think we just got like a question and answer message from, I think somebody did answer him, from Prem Rajgopal, that he wanted to talk about the Columbus statue.
Yeah, good afternoon, commissioners. And I'd be happy to start with the conversation around Columbus, and then we can move through a few other topics to bring up in the staff and director report. As you are all aware, there have been a number of communications coming in from the public with regard to the Columbus statue. You received via email earlier today the ones that were specifically addressed to the commission or to the commissioners. I wanted to take a moment to come to a point of clarification in that although the issues around the Columbus statue are very much top of mind for the individuals in this group and for individuals in our community, the commission is not being asked to review it at this time. That decision would need to formally come in front of the commission, and apologies, can you hear me now? Yes.
You repeat that again?
Thank you. I've been told my internet is unstable right now. All of that is to say that there's a lot of, can you all hear me right now?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. There's a lot of conversation around Columbus. The issue of the city's Columbus statue has not formally been brought to the commissioners to review and make a decision on. And what I'd like to do is pivot from the issue specifically of that one statue to a conversation we started together last month in the staff and director report conversation, which was about a collection audit and assessment for the city of Pittsburgh. So
before we pivot, though, can you further explain what the formal process is, especially for the benefit of the attendees?
I'll do my best. I've been trying to understand the history of the Art Commission and how things come forward, with this being my second meeting. But as I understand it, and I'm sure that some of my colleagues on this call could help if I misrepresent, you all have been appointed by the mayor as commissioners, and you have been delegated authority to review and make decisions on applications that come in front of the committee. And that is your priority job. There are other instances, as we've talked about with the case of Stephen Foster, where the mayor has put forward and asked the commissioners to hold a special hearing, to have discussion, to move forward with a set of decisions that fall outside of our normal application process. But with regard specifically to Columbus, that action has not been triggered. Does that make sense?
Sarah, I would like to, this is Commissioner Luckett. Before any of us, and I'm talking about the city staff and the commissioners, before any of us were here, Stephen Foster, Columbus have all been brought up publicly, and before even the mayor was the mayor. So I'm just letting you know that, that it's our duty as commissioners to make it publicly known and disclose that information to the public. And it's also the duty for the city staff to make it transparent as to how one goes about getting something in front of the commission to petition the mayor or to write letters to the mayor. I think all of those correspondences that you all shared with us in an email that Tony sent, they're great, but I do think the public is a bit confused as to who has authority, what's the chain of command. I think there's a lot of moving pieces here. And for you to pivot to say, let's look at the art inventory, yes, I would like to do that. But also is right now in this moment has been before the commission, before all of us. So I just want to make that clear that it shouldn't just be, oh, let's not look at this, let's not discuss this, because this is a very important thing to discuss. Okay, and so we have an obligation to let the public know what is the chain of commands that they have to go about, because there are letters that were shared directly to the commission, the art commission. There were letters to the mayor's office. There was letters to the planning commission. So people really don't know who to address their concerns to. And so that's something that we as a city have to do a better job of notifying the public on how and where and what that can be done. And also that the mayor's office, I would like to know, as an art commissioner, where does the mayor stand on this? Has he made a public announcement as to, yes, I've heard these concerns, so let's have a public forum on this, because this does deserve a public forum. I am an art historian, and like I said, before I was even on this earth, that statue has been a problem. The figure, historically speaking, Columbus, Stephen Foster, all of it. So we need to do a better job of being transparent and talking about this, because if we don't, it's going to look as if we're trying to hide something. And I want to be very clear to everybody, acting director Dash, everybody, I'm going to be transparent, and I'm going to make sure that publicly the residents of the city of Pittsburgh have a better understanding of what our process is and who to go to.
Thank you, Kilolo. I'm in agreement with you on all of those issues. I also think that the emails that we received did not truly reflect the response by our community. There were very few emails, but there are two petitions on change.org, which are not directed specifically to us, but at the last, I read one of the emails and she referred to these petitions, and they've been signed. There are two different petitions, one pro and one con, and they've been signed by about 15,000 people. So I think the emails that we receive don't really truly reflect what our community is, how our community is responding to this.
And
I'm in
also,
agreement with both of you. Yeah, sorry.
And also, if there's a petition with 13,000 signatures, where is that petition going? And why is not the mayor responding to that?
I believe the one petition was being sent to the Parks Department and
Parks Conservancy, I think.
Parks and Conservancy, thank you. And the other one is broader, but I believe it went to the city as well, to the city. And I do thank the writer of the email, I think Lori Beth Jones, who brought this to our attention. So I wouldn't have known unless I read her email.
And Sarah, I'd like to make another comment. I see in the Q&A that 2 people have made comments, and that I know you're only doing your job, but I do think that this is it's doing the public a disservice to say, thank you for your comment. The Columbus statue is not formally in front of the Art Commission today. Public testimony is taken for existing agenda items. I think we need to give them more information about what they can do instead of it just seems as if it's just a shutting down that conversation of somebody just clearly wanting to know and asking for information. So I just want to say that as well.
So clearly this is an important issue, and I think it will not be the last time it comes up. And part of what Sarah referred to is the assessment of other pieces of art, quote unquote, in the city. So this may not be the last time this issue comes up. And I wholeheartedly agree that this is important and it should get attention. The question is what the process is for this as a specific commission is to deal with these sort of things. And the commissions, I think all the commissions in the city are set up to be reactive, that they have to have something brought before them in order to discuss it and evaluate it and have the public conversation about it. And I think that's where the difficulty is. I mean, someone needs to have this officially brought to us, and I think it certainly warrants discussion, a meeting, perhaps another special meeting as we had for Stephen Foster. But again, we have to be asked a question before we can answer the question. Cololo, I agree with you totally that we need to be transparent. We need to try to convey to people what that process is. I don't know if it's, and I don't know that there is a formal process. By petitioning the mayor or sending a petition, that sort of thing. Either it needs to come from the mayor's office to set up a special meeting, or some other form of application before us. That's a little frustrating. I totally agree, but that's unfortunately the process.
Rob, Commissioner Arimoto Mercer here. I think part of the confusion for me is that are we just assuming we're a reactive body, or I don't see it written anywhere based on the way things have run up till now. Or
in fact, I think I agree with you, Carrie, and I think that the history of this art commission has evidence of the commission taking action on their own. Yeah, it may have been a long time ago, but I believe that is the case. I don't have the specific.
And I would like to add that we did get emails which were directly sent to the commission talking about the Columbus statue, and Commissioner Indovina did answer that on our behalf. So I don't know if it's already, if it's addressed to us. Are we not, are we supposed to be passive till we get a letter from the mayor or some sort of go ahead from the mayor before we respond? Sarah, if you could let us know what the process is, if there is any.
Also, I mean, the mayor hasn't directed us to or tasked us to do something. but is he also tasking us to not do anything? I mean, I'd like to know the answer to that as well.
One suggestion is that we can convey a sense of the commission, and it certainly is the sense of the commission, that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. I would be happy to write that and send it to the mayor's office and try to get some movement on this.
And also, were these 6 emails given a response to the process of bringing it before the commission?
I'm happy to try and address as many of those questions as possible. I wanted to give a little bit of space for all of you to speak before jumping back in. To Commissioner Luckett's comments, I absolutely agree the process is confusing and we do need to do a better job of clarifying how to take a next step. And I think where we've been in the last 2 meetings is that the next step is not coming directly to the commission, that the Columbus statute needs to be brought in front of the commission formally. That is not to say, to Commissioner Arimoto Mercer's comment, that the commission is not being asked to do anything. It just hasn't come forward yet. So I think Commissioner Luckett, being able to better direct the public, for example, to contact the mayor, for example, to contact city council, for the public to move through the process through those realms in order to get it put forward for the commission to deliberate and decide on, is what we need to do a better job of being clear in directing.
Because I also feel that Mr., forgive me if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, Rajgopal came to us last year, and he's been incredibly patient in waiting for a response. And he has been also very diligently coming to each of the meetings. And since we only meet once a month, he's had to wait quite a few months to actually get something substantive.
Rob, to your point, this is Commissioner Luckett. I know in the past that the commission has written letters to the mayor's office and to whoever else we need to say, yes, this needs to have some formal agenda item on the commission. That has happened in the past. It's been on the history of the commission. Yes, the history of the commission, to Andrew's point, Commissioner Moss has been very proactive. The commission has been very proactive in the past as well. And so I do think so there's a couple of things that I'm thinking here that I wrote some notes about is moving forward, Sarah, what are the items that the staff can take moving forward as far as responding to the public, and what else can the city do to publicly make available the information so people have a better understanding of what needs to be done and how decisions are made.
Thank you, Commissioner. So with regard to what's been done in the past, I don't have certainly the history that you do of being able to look back at previous actions and discussions. I think that to answer sort of 2 questions, Commissioner, that you just raised, the first is that the staff can do a better job of looking at what exists on our website as we've moved to virtual commission meetings and making sure that the steps there are clear and specific to the purpose of the Art Commission, and being able to put a bit more information, Director Dashin, correct me if I'm wrong, but being able to put a bit more direct information about where to go with specific questions or concerns. All of the emails that you all received today, we have one
Yeah, I think that, may be a way forward. And again, I would be happy to draft a letter indicating the sense of the commission and direct it to the mayor that we've been, we have a concern, B, we've been approached by the public regarding this issue, and we feel that it's an appropriate thing to be brought to the commission.
But I think it's also important for the public to know that we have been told that we cannot respond to the public as individuals, but that the commission's response must come from the commission as a whole, through Rob or the vice chair.
Yeah, I think, again, it is confusing. I'm just looking at the 175 ordinance, and it says that no piece of work can be moved, relocated, et cetera, without the approval of the Art Commission. But it doesn't say anything about the Art Commission determining that up front. It's a little ambiguous. Maybe that's something we need to address in the ordinance to make that clearer. Because clearly this is an issue.
I do think, commissioners, and I don't have it handy, but the Art Commission bylaws, I think that there's a pretty lengthy section in there about how to field questions from the public or the press. I may be wrong, but that's worth looking at as well. I don't want to cut this discussion short. I'd love to be able to talk about the collection audit as the commissioners feel it's time to shift to that.
Sarah, is that something that you're able to do for the commission, is to double check our bylaws just to make sure that we are addressing this properly?
Absolutely, I'm happy to do that.
And Sarah, do you mind circulating the bylaws to all the commissioners too?
Happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
So as a means forward in the meeting here, is there any further discussion about this? We all recognize the problem. I think we have to collectively figure out a solution. But I think part of it is the audit, and that's going to recognize in the future whether there are similar problems that are going to occur.
I have a quick question. So if we did do the audit and we feel that there are some problematic sculptures, then what's the role of the commission? I'm just curious. If we cannot comment on the Columbus statue till we get an official sort of application to comment on it, then how is it going to help us to do the audit if we find things that are problematic? Then what's our next step? Just so that we are aware of how to proceed with the audit.
So I'd love to be able to tell the commission some of the conversations we've been having about a collection audit and assessment, and try and get back to that question, Commissioner, of what would happen next and where would the Art Commission come into play. We've been having a couple of preliminary conversations with our colleagues in the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy, who have also been the recipients of many emails and communications from the public, and who recognize that several of the potentially problematic monuments, memorials, artworks exist within parks that they operate in. So we've been discussing an idea of trying to gather together approximately 8 experts who could help do research on the existing city inventory, using the city inventory that's accessible on the website. Really as a phase 1 research to get a first pass of potentially problematic works within the collection, either from maker, subject, or historical context. But to ask that group of experts to really just do that part, that's phase 1. Phase 2 is a bit farther out on the horizon, and there would certainly want to be a lot more conversation around what to do next, but it could take the shape of a task force or several task forces to look into groups of potentially problematic objects or specific potentially problematic objects. And you can imagine sort of running the process for any number of objects that were flagged in that early sort of assessment. Where it goes from there is the potential to run a course like you all are familiar with the Stephen Foster Memorial, where certain objects or memorials or monuments are put forward as this is one that definitely has a problematic nature to it. Pairing that with looking at a physical assessment of that object, looking at where it exists within the city. Does it have other contextual things around it? For example, is it adjacent to a historical marker, or is it something that's been recently renovated and there are commemorative plaques about the restoration with it? And to take each of those as a case by case and run a more thoughtful sort of process involving the community for each of those ones and how to pursue the right path. I think when it ultimately comes to the commission, as I understand the essence of your role, it would be coming in front of the commission with a keep it where it is, or take it down, or recontextualize it. I'm sort of getting ahead of the process, but I think that's where it comes back to the commission, that there is work that's been done and put into it, that there's a deeper context and assessment to what the individual piece is, and then coming forward for decision making with the commission.
So not to go back to like the Columbus statue, but what would like Prem Rajagopal, like what would he have to do to bring it in front of the commission? Does he have to message the mayor? Like if how does it come in front of the commission? Just for like, this is more for like the public to know what the process is, so they know what to do in the future, and for this particular monument that's in question.
Again, go ahead.
Well, Rob already said that he's going to put together a letter, a draft, right, Rob, and circulate it to the other commissioners. That has happened in the past. So it doesn't preclude the commission from saying anything. We just publicly can't say anything to like the media. And I do see that there's an open question from Miguel and some clarity about, do you want me to just read it out loud?
Sure.
I mean, there's a question. It says, hello, I am Miguel Segue. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Miguel. Representing Caney Indian Spiritual Circle. Are we to understand that we need to persuade the mayor to formally bring the issue of the Columbus statue before the commission, before it can be addressed? Also, can we, the interested parties, also be privy to the bylaws outlining the process of bringing the issue to this commission formally? Those were his two questions. And I do think that our bylaws, they were at some point online as well. And I know it's sometimes they can get buried. So that's something else, Sarah, if you don't mind looking to see, because I was actually trying to find them the other day and I couldn't find them. And they were once upon a time available online.
I'd be happy to look into that as well. Certainly the bylaws speak with the legislative code that created and governs the commission, and that is publicly accessible as well, but I will check the bylaws.
And just to follow on some of the things that Sarah had said, I think part of us trying to look at the entire collection is to be able to build a process. I think that we, when Stephen Foster was, kind of outlined by the mayor to pursue a process. I mean, there is, right now the only opportunity is to lobby the mayor after there is a problem to then create a process. And I think one of the things that we're trying to be intentional about in being able to assess the, assess the inventory is not only just even to identify what those characteristics are that may cause us to want to be able to more proactively go through a process and bring things to the commission. Because I think that, if we look at what's going on nationally and beyond, it was Stephen Foster before, it's Columbus now. We can assume that this will not be the end of, of times in which, items like this will be brought before the commission, before the city. And so we really want to do through this, try to build a process so that it is clearer to people moving forward, and that we're not creating a new process for each one of these as they arise. And I know that's not a great answer when people want action now on the thing that is, the thing that is in front of us now, which is Columbus. And, and that's where, again, whether it's the commission or whether it's individuals that, want to petition the mayor to take more immediate action on Columbus, that is, that is, how they would do that. But the intention of what we've discussed with the mayor as a direction by looking at the inventory and trying to build a process is so that we can handle not only this one, but the other ones that we know will be coming, through. And I think that, that's where Sarah bringing, kind of folks together to, to be able to discuss that, to be able to identify those potential criteria, that's what we're hoping to do.
Director Dash, I see what you're saying. However, this statue is in a very public and prominent place, whereas other things that we might not even know of, or some that might be problematic, I do think it might be apples and oranges, and I don't think that this should preclude having the mayor actually say something about this. I still don't know where the mayor stands on this. And so I don't think we should have to wait for us to get a process together, because history has shown that that is also another way for people to drag their feet as well. And that, once again, this is not the first time that this statue has been problematic, and that the public has spoken up with concerns. And the same thing with the Stephen Foster. This happened prior to the 70s. I mean, when the statue went up, it was highly problematic. So I don't want to wait for us to have some type of holistic process, and that might be 1 or 2 or 3 years down the road. So I'm as a commissioner ready to move forward with a letter that Rob will draft and us take a look at, and then we can look at the other things as we need to. That's just my comment. I don't want to have to wait a couple of years, because I know how long the process is.
I am with you, Kilolo. Yeah, I agree with you.
So to confuse things slightly, I thought that our purview is to review and approve things that were brought to us, but in the bylaws, it says the commission is authorized to devise and recommend for adoption by council ordinance the designs and regulations as may tend to prevent the unsightly occupation of the streets and open spaces, and so far as may be practical to promote the beautification of the streets and open spaces. So conceivably, we could consider as a commission that the statute represents the unsightly occupation of the streets and open spaces and recommend to the council an ordinance regarding it. The process clearly needs to be defined better and honed, because there seems to be two different approaches to things. My suggestion actually is to, the letter of the sense of the commission is to address it both to the mayor and to city council based on what's in the bylaws I'm reading.
Sure.
Any thoughts there?
I think the broader our reach with this letter, the better.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, well, I will try to put something together.
I agree as well.
In the next day or so.
Also,
circulate it
I
for
agree also.
comment.
And is it possible for us to make like our stance on this public, or is that against the bylaws of the commission?
I certainly don't purport to be an expert on sunshine laws and that sort of thing. I know that we cannot, as a commission, meet and take action outside of a public meeting. I'm not sure about discussion or executive session or whether any of those things are applicable.
So if I may, to get back to the collection, audit, and assessment, just to give a timeline on that first phase, which is the first pass overview of our existing inventory. Our expectation is to be able to begin that work, pull that group together within the next couple of weeks. Our goal was to be able to get a communication drafted by the end of this week and really try to do that first pass assessment in very short order, the fall, not have that be a protracted process.
Now, Sarah, are the people you've selected for this diverse from different groups, or how are you making, on what basis are you making a selection for?
Thank you. To be clear, individuals have not been selected. We've started a conversation with colleagues about who has access to, who works with monuments and public art within Pittsburgh, and starting there as sort of a logical cast of characters. There's not been a codified list of people yet, but again, thinking about for example, thinking about some of the historians and archivists who are involved in research around the Stephen Foster Memorial. And this is not to, again, this first phase would not be to assess a value on individual works within the collection. It would be to just do the pure research part of assembling, here's what we understand about the maker, here's what we understand about the subject, here's what we understand about the historical context for which this monument came to be. So not ascribing value to it. I think really just surfacing the data.
I think it would be good, as if with the past, to have a few of the commissioners part of that conversation. Not to volunteer anybody, but I do think it's a healthy way to involve a few of the commissioners, if not one.
No, I think that's a good idea.
And is somebody going to answer Miguel's questions that he has there? Is that for somebody on staff or a commissioner to respond to? Is it, Sarah, is that you, since you answered the other questions?
Yes, I am looking at it. We've discussed it. Director Dash, were you gonna jump in?
I was just gonna say that it would be staff that would answer it. Yes, that's how we've done this through the virtual commissions.
Yes.
So if staff's going to answer it, I mean, I would like to see the answer that they're getting.
So as we've been talking about, the mayor does need to ask the commission to debate and decide on Columbus specifically, if that's the hypothetical in front of us. So the first part of Miguel's question, yes, the mayor does need to be the one to put it forward. The second question, and we've talked about a number of ways to surface awareness to the mayor from individuals within the commission and individuals within the public. The second question, can the interested parties also be made privy to the bylaws outlining the process? We're checking on that. We know that Chapter 175, which is the code which establishes the Art Commission and what it tasks them to do, is publicly available. We're going to look at, per Commissioner Luckett's recollection, they used to be accessible on the website. I would need to look back and look at that. And we can certainly share the link at least to Chapter 175 and look and determine where the bylaws exist.
Excuse me, Sarah, can you type that answer in just like you did with the other ones to this person, please?
Sure. Someone else may, I can't talk and I can't give the staff report and type, but I'm happy to type now.
It's unclear to me whether Miguel is being asked to wait or whether he can, on his own, take some proactive measure to persuade the mayor.
I think a citizen certainly can do that.
So he should go directly to the mayor's office with his concerns.
I don't think we're telling him one way or the other, but he's certainly free to do that. Absolutely.
Could he also go to a city council person?
Yes.
I think, yeah, anybody's certainly free to do that. So I think we have some sense of moving forward. I think we can try to move forward with the meeting as well. Is there, do we want to discuss this audit any further, or are there other staff report items that you want to bring up?
There are a number of other things I'd like to share. I'm trying to type this comment response.
Okay, give you a minute.
I have a quick question. What is the status of the Beach View monument?
Tony, could you feel
Tony,
that?
is there any update there that you can share with?
Sure. There has been no additional updates. You know, I am assuming that the next step, which was going to be some interaction with the community, probably got put on hold with the current situation.
Thank you. Will we also talk about the vacancy on the commission?
Well, Sarah is still typing, and in the past, the vacancies have always been filled from the mayor's office. I think, again, we're probably welcome to offer suggestions, but that's always come directly from the mayor's office.
We do have another message from Prem Rajgopal. He had spoken to the mayor's office. Would you like me to read that? Or
okay.
The spokesperson for Pittsburgh Mayor Bill Peduto explained that any decision regarding the Columbus statue was up to the city's art commission. And then there's a link to it. So I'm still a little confused about how we get this on the agenda. Can we as private citizens come forward with a proposal of replacement on our own without the mayor's support? As the mayor's office has largely been ignoring us except for this one statement.
Sarah, are you still typing? Do you want me to? Oh, no.
No, thank you, Tony. With regard to this comment, I would say, I'm not sure, Director Dash, I don't know how to get looped in on the statement coming from the mayor's office, but for the latter part, as private citizens, can they come forward with a proposal for replacement? My understanding is that the Art Commission, if they were tasked to do something about Columbus, would be about the removal, and it would be an entirely different topic, different subject before the commission to talk about a replacement.
But to sort of answer his question about whether or not they can come forward as private citizens, and the answer would be yes, because any application from a private citizen needs the letter of support from DOMI or DPW, which is the city then saying, with the voice of the mayor, this is an application we want the Art Commission to make a decision on. So if he came forward with a proposal of his own, or a community group did, or any private citizen, with a letter of support from the appropriate city department, that would be heard before the Art Commission.
So would it be, should the first proposal be for the removal of the statue? The replacement would be a subsequent proposal? Is that the correct?
I think that they are two different actions and two different decisions that hypothetically would be asked of the commission. So in a hypothetical, the first action to ask the commission would be, should this be kept in place, removed, or altered in some way? And then a subsequent decision would be, assuming that there's nothing in its place, what should go in its place, if anything should go in its place.
And Sarah, were there
my recollection on the Stephen Foster process was that we were asked three questions. One, should it stay in place? Should it be removed? Or should it be add some interpretive?
Actually take that into the kitchen just for a minute so I can hear.
And there would be a public hearing after the application for removal, as was the procedure for the Stephen Foster?
Anything coming to the commission is a public hearing. That happened to be a special hearing.
So not to, I don't know. I'm reading our ordinance 175.04, which talks about relocation or removal of artwork. And it states any work of art shall be removed, relocated, or altered in any way that may be ordered by a vote passed and approved in writing by 2/3 of all the members of the Art Commission. Unless it's part of a building and it would impact the structure of the building. I mean, I don't even know why we can't just act on this if we wish to do so. I don't know why we need an application to respond to. It seems like if this is something that I would imagine any one of the commissioners has the ability to make a motion, and then our commission can act on that motion.
Andrew, where are you seeing that in the 175?
175.04 talks about removal or relocation or altering existing work of art.
Another option, and Director Dash, correct me if I'm wrong, it won't resolve it in this particular moment, but we could ask, I believe we could ask the city solicitor's office to speak with the commission and help us understand and talk through taking some of this code language and putting it into sort of how we operate, how the commission operates, to these points about referencing citations from the code.
Yeah, clearly that would be helpful because we're kind of foundering here.
Commissioner Indovina, could you repeat yourself? I couldn't hear you very clearly.
And now he can't hear you.
Yeah. Rob?
Oh, I'm sorry?
I couldn't hear you earlier. Could you repeat yourself? Like, it wasn't very clear.
I just said that clearly we need some direction from the law department as to what our purview is and what the process is here.
Because based on what Commissioner Moss is saying, we can make a motion, say today, and kind of come to a conclusion on what we need done.
Would that be able to happen without the public knowing we are talking about this as part of the agenda?
I don't see where our ordinance states that that needs to happen. But I am no lawyer.
Exactly.
Why, yeah, I don't know why that would need to go to the law department if it explicitly says that in the bylaws here. I'm looking at the bylaws as well.
It was just a suggestion. It wasn't something to force. I think I'm having trouble tracking who's looking at bylaws and who's looking at code. And it would be helpful to, if you all feel like you're on the same page with the code, so you don't see the suggestion of law to come in and help.
Is there a difference between the term bylaws and the city ordinance, specifically chapter 175, that you're saying, yes, those are two different things?
Yes.
Okay. Then, yeah, I am not looking at the bylaws. I am only looking at our chapter 175 of the city ordinance.
So my understanding is that Chapter 175 establishes the Art Commission, declares what they do and how they operate. The bylaws, as I understand it, are sort of the operating procedures of the commission under the umbrella of what's been set up in the code for Chapter 175.
Right. So we should certainly review those bylaws before we take action, I think, incorrectly.
A lot of the language is repeated, so.
Yeah, and I do think having a letter and just stating what it is that the commission feels strongly about and moving forward whatever that decision is. I think having that letter and addressing it to the mayor and actually to the public, I think would be a good thing.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And would it be possible to set an interim meeting so we don't have to wait for a month should we decide to go forward?
I am not positive, but I did not think we had the ability to do that. We had to only have official meetings scheduled.
But I thought with Stephen Foster, we were given the option of having a special meeting.
All right, special hearing. You're right.
Hearing.
I mean,
There was a special hearing.
The letter could be written still, right? The letter could go out to the mayor and to the public, sort of reiterating. And if we need to put it on the agenda, if the ordinance says that the art commission can make a motion, then we can put it on the agenda for next month's meeting, which I know delays it, but at least it's on the agenda. And that way it's something that can be discussed and we can make a motion at that point. And we are not dilly-dallying and like going around in circles trying to figure out what's to be done.
Correct. I think we had the hearing and made the ruling at the meeting or the regular meeting.
So the public would be aware of the discussion that will be happening at the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, if it all works out, that would be an agenda item, which would be public record. I think we have some sense. Again, I think I'll draft this letter. Maybe I will suggest that we put it on the art commission agenda and see if we get any reaction to that. And I'm just concerned that we do things properly and legally and all that sort of thing. Because there are legal requirements to what we do. We're a legally constituted commission.
Absolutely.
So, okay, I think we've discussed that quite a bit.
So are we all clear on what our tasks are moving forward, our action items?
For me, is to draft the letter that I plan on addressing to both the mayor and council, and we'll add a suggestion that we would like to include it on our subsequent agenda.
For me, it's checking the bylaws, circulating them to the commission, confirming where they are, if they are on the website, and following up with the individual in the Q&A.
And just for clarification, was the discussion to have this, the commission's desire to have this on the next meeting agenda to take an action on it? Or, I mean, because so with Stephen Foster, as I'm sure many of you recall more than I do, there was kind of a press release announcing the special hearing. There was a public comment form, an online comment form that we received comments for folks that was open for a month. There was a 45 to 60 day public process that occurred around Stephen Foster before it was brought to the commission for a final vote. And so if I just want to understand what the intention of this being on the agenda for the next meeting is, if the commission's intent is to be able to make a decision or something else.
Yeah, again, I'm not sure we know what the process is.
I think to put this on the agenda for next meeting is to have some sort of framing around it, to have some public kind of like a not the special hearing, but some formal way of letting the public know that this is on the agenda ahead of time and to put this on the agenda. And maybe that would be something that once we have the letter and it's submitted, that we can formally read the letter at the agenda. I'm just putting that out.
And I think a press release could be done prior to that. And if the commissioner's letter needs to be put in that press release, that's okay with me as well. I don't know if we can do that, but if we can, then we can make our sort of stance public on that. And that way people, if they agree or disagree, can come in on the next meeting and we can sort of take a decision or wait, like depending on how we feel about it or what the protocol is.
I don't know that a press release is required. We're just asking to have this topic officially on our agenda for discussion.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know that we need to, we've never, ever, in my knowledge, issued a press release. So I think it's, again, it's all public information, publicly accessible. It seems to me that having an agenda item that's publicly posted is what our responsibility is.
And we can make the letter on the that the letter can be posted on the actual website as well.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And you could direct any of the people who wrote these emails to look for that letter on the website.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a first response, I think.
By point of clarification, when you say post it on the website, you mean where the public can see what's on the agenda for the meeting?
Correct.
Okay, is that a sense of a plan to move forward here?
I feel good.
I'm seeing nods, so yeah. I'm not sure if there was anything else that was to be discussed.
We did want to discuss the 175 and if it's gone, like I thought it was ready to move forward, but apparently the other departments have to do an okay on it. I wasn't aware of that at that point. But Sarah did email us saying that all the other departments have to agree with the changes in the amendment that have been made to 175.
I'm happy to answer further questions about the revisions if there are any. I think we've made some good progress in having conversations with our partners in DOMI and DPW, and we need to continue doing that work.
Yeah, and I don't think that it's necessarily that, you know, they have to approve in any way. I think it's just that we want to be making sure that the language that's in the code relative to percent for art and how that works from a process standpoint is something that we can make sure that it's implementable and that it's something that we're getting the results that the commission wants to see out of it, which is that we are, you know, doing percent for art out of these infrastructure and municipal projects.
And again, I think the public, I think, really needs to hear some of these proposals, they're not proposals, but clarification of this 1%, because generally, like, how will somebody find this information?
Happy to have further discussion. Right now, the existing chapter 175 discusses the percent for art right now. As Director Dash mentioned, we need to make sure that this can be something consistently applied going forward, and that we have our full city team ready and poised to create those art opportunities. Anecdotally, I've been talking to several artists over the last couple of months who are not aware that we are a percent for art city. So I think that just underscores the importance of being able to do the work now to make sure that everyone's on the same page and ready to implement it consistently.
Okay. All right. Are there any other staff items or director items?
I did have one other item I wanted to bring to the commissioners as a FYI and an update, and it involves a temporary project that the city is partnering with Boom Concepts to do some short-term responsive murals on city spaces. This is something that went through really driven by the mayor's office and working really closely with the mayor's office. It went through resolution just last week. There are a lot of details about the project that are still in the process of being confirmed, but the plan is to partner with Boom Concepts and identify a few city spaces that can receive some responsive current temporary artworks, and as allow the city to sort of dip its toe into being able to add to and contribute to a Pittsburgh art ecosystem where the city can use its spaces to help amplify and display marginalized voices, marginalized Pittsburgh artist voices in the city. Because it's a temporary project, it didn't come through a formal application process. Because it is an experiment, we're looking forward to being able to see how this works and come back to the commission to talk in greater detail about how something like this either did or didn't work, and how we might think about ways to continue offering city spaces for additional temporary works if there's appetite and the logistics support it.
So what I'm hearing is, Sarah, can we just be very direct about this? I just hear what you're saying is you're kind of tiptoeing around. Are you talking about Black people? Because Boom Concept is a predominantly Black arts organization. I love what they do. And is the mayor's office, the city, responding to Black Lives Matter, George Floyd's death, and some of the Black Lives Matter language that has been surfacing around various different properties around the city? Is that what you're talking about? And that we need to have more Black and brown works of art out into the public realm? Is that what you're talking about?
I'd be happy to back up to the origins of this idea were prompted right at the beginning of June, when there were a lot of protests, rallies, and marches, and many Black Lives Matters murals went up throughout the city. They all happened to be on non-city properties, and it really started a conversation about how to support and amplify those voices within city properties.
When you said those voices, whose voices are you talking about specifically?
It's in response to the Black Lives Matters murals that were going up throughout the city.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, the city, the mayor's office wants to explore doing some temporary pop-up art projects that don't need to come in from the commission because they're temporary and you all are experimenting. So I would like to know what kind of projects you're talking about. And I really think that to kind of go around the commission when this is something very important and that we are thinking about, you know, the public is talking about the Columbus statue and that doesn't seem to have any response from the mayor's office specifically, but yet what I'm hearing from you is the mayor's office has taken upon themselves to want to have this arrangement with Boom's Concept without even, this is the first time you're bringing this up to us. And so it just baffles me, one, that you're doing this, and two, not that I don't think it's important, but I do question the timing, and that this does look like it could be very window dressing and whitewashing of what is going on, and to actually further undermine the Black Lives Matter movement. That's just something that I want to put out there and be very clear about and transparent, because we've seen this in other cities happen. And for the mayor to just look at one organization and not make this open, this could be an open call. Why just one organization? Not to say that they're not worthy, but these are just questions that I have.
Sure, and to clarify, so the city is asking Boom Concepts to put a call and do an artist selection for some limited spaces for a temporary duration.
And where are these spaces? Are they designated spaces, or is this something that you're having Boom take a look at?
We're in the process of talking about it together from Boom's perspective, as they're sort of overseeing the artist project management piece, and from the city's perspective in terms of locations that are in good condition, easily accessible, don't have maintenance issues. So it's truly a partnership and a back and forth about what are the most feasibly appropriate spaces.
Is there a budget for this?
The mayor's office has contributed $5,000 towards this project, and the intent is to do some matching fundraising that would go directly to Boom Concepts.
So why not share this with the commission when you all were talking about this, and also possibly involve some of the commissioners in this?
Again, this came up in June. This is as fleshed out as it has been so far, and it was on my agenda for staff report today.
You could have easily emailed this to us as well. And I don't mean to be directing this only to you. I'm talking to Tony, and I'm talking to Director Dash and any other staff people. Because I do think that this, once again, these unilateral moves that are happening, and for me as a commissioner to not be aware of this until right now, it's already in motion, and that there's not even any type of, consideration of any comments or even input from commissioners. And also, I don't like to hear these very broad brushstroke definitions of marginalized voices. Just be explicit. Be able to talk about this. Because if you can't, then we're just going to go back to square one, and these problems are still going to be arising.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, this is very reminiscent of the Stephen Foster situation, where a committee or commission was formed to provide a replacement statue, or at least that's what the public was led to believe. And we were not privy to that. And I think it's just kind of disingenuous and not thinking that we might not have the public's best intentions for the public to not be included in that dialogue.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any further discussion about that? And was there a timing issue with this, Sarah, that this moved quickly, and that happens frequently?
Sure. The intent was for this to be responsive, so quicker in planning and execution. It did just go in front of council. There was a bit of a time crunch to get it in front of council before they go on summer recess.
Oh my gosh, so this is going in front of city council? This is going in front of city council? Why does it need to go in front of city council?
In order to
the budget has to go to city council. So since there's an allocation of funds for the project, anytime there's an allocation of funds for a project, it has to go before city council. They have to approve it.
Is this being disclosed anywhere on the city's website?
Yes, and there was a press release, around this. Sarah, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to help me on the date. That was very recent.
Wait, so there's a press release, but you all didn't want to say anything to the commission till today? You realize how weird this sounds? Do you realize how this is so bizarre? How all of this is playing out? The process, the lack of process?
Well, I mean, I think as Sarah said, it's a temporary piece that wouldn't, that doesn't come to the commission otherwise. We're trying to, ensure that you're informed of this. I think, we're definitely hearing that, there's a desire to be informed differently, and I think we want to try to figure that out. And I'd say that
very explicit that what the mayor is doing and what you all have done, and you put out a press release, you didn't even send out a press release. I mean, it's like beyond disingenuous. It's like, okay, let's just do something, address the Black Lives Matter, kind of like putting out a statement. And so this to the public to say that that the city cares about Black people. I mean, just from you all's lack of response to what I'm saying, you're just saying, yes, you hear what I'm saying. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just don't know how to respond. It was something that was discussed with both Sarah and I and folks in the mayor's office as a direction. I'd say that longer term, we have placed budget in to do more responsive art. In this case, was around kind of racial injustice and highlighting Black and brown artists. In the future, responsive art could be about many different things and not specifically about that. So I think this is something that we would like to, to be doing more frequently, is being able to use public art to be responsive to social issues.
But you do understand how that, to us, it feels like you are circumventing us as a commitment and the things that we bring to that, things we can bring to the table. It feels dismissive of us and the role and what we've been asked to do.
Okay, yeah, I mean, we're happy. I mean, I guess the thing, and I think we'll all have to work on that together, is that, since it was not a, decision that, the Art Commission had to make, that's why we were bringing it to you as a part of a staff report to make sure that you were all aware of what was going on. And again, this is something that has, taken place since the last Art Commission meeting. So it's not that this has been something that's been in development for a long period of time. But, the Art Commission is not the only commission that we, have these questions around, kind of how the work of the department relates to the purview of the commission. Planning Commission, for example, reviews a lot of development issues. And at the same time, there are times that the department is working on legislation and things like that, that we're trying to work out how to make sure that the commission is informed do those things that, you know, that relate to the commission, but the commission may not specifically have a decision to make on. So I think that's something that we'll, you know, we're definitely willing to continue to work with the commission to figure out how to best share information, how to make sure that the commission is informed.
I think just an email would have been like, to keep us in the loop would have been good, and for us to give some comments on it. Because this does feel like what happened with the Stephen Foster and the Band-Aid that was being tried to put to like remove the statue and let's put another statue up and let's not talk about the racial problems that exist in Pittsburgh. And it's sort of kind of taking that same road that, oh, there's the Black Lives protest. Let's just do something with one of the Black artists. And I think like it's like to call it marginalized is like it's a specific community you're targeting. And I think it needs to be boldly amplified and accepted. And that's the only way change will come forward.
And I think what we're also talking about, the process is very souring to hear. And there are many organizations that can benefit, and to not even talk to us about recommendations and sort of circumvent what our role is to be part of this commission. I think it invalidates a lot of why we're here.
Is this to be part of an ongoing program that would have other instances that of similar goals, et cetera? And certainly it would be helpful to be, you know, make sure the communication is open, that we're aware of these things.
The answer is yes. I mean, it is. I mean, although I would say that, you know, what was done this time is, you know, is a one-time, you know, is a one-time working with Boom specifically. You know, the intention of the department is to, you know, we're in budget season right now. We have, you know, as a part of that, submitted to, you know, to create a larger responsive public art program to be able to do, you know, to do these projects over time. You know, so although, you know, I think this came together more quickly, the intention is to be able to respond, you know, to have art be able to respond to public issues and public discourse, you know, and to be able to have funds to be able to do that.
Okay. On that note, are there any other staff or director items?
I have nothing further.
Okay. Well, in that case, I think we can draw this to a close. Unless there's any other comments in general anybody would like to make?
Could you please send me that press release?
I'm happy to do that.
To all of the commissioners, please?
Yep.
Okay. So formally, is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion to adjourn.
Okay. Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, can we do this on a voice vote? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you.